Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this quarter's Executive Focus Elevate event. As Lori said, my name is Alan Morse. I've been working in the design industry with manufacturing AEC firms for roughly about 30 years. And part of my job is, and an exciting part of my job is understanding insights in the industries, along with helping set the strategic direction internally to make sure we're aligning properly with organizations like you guys on the call. As it said, I'm joined today by James Slater, who works for Autodesk. He's held multiple roles over the last, what is it, James, 7 to 12 years, depending on companies got acquired. His current role is a global senior knowledge transfer manager at Autodesk, so I'm super excited to have him on. And we try to run these events quarterly from a higher level insight standpoint to give you guys topics that we think are affecting design, manufacturers, owners, general contractors. And so let's get into the agenda. So this quarter, we decided to tackle the #1 topic that probably comes up with almost every organization we interact with. And it really revolves around 3 questions. What should we be thinking about as an organization? What are our peers thinking about? And how are they solving these business critical challenges? So the agenda for today is I'm going to kick things off, just talk a little about what we'll be doing. I'm going to ask James to come on board to talk about the survey, the data that Autodesk and a third-party consultant put together. And then I'm going to come back on again and talk a little about real-world showcases of just how clients like yourself are tackling obstacles to be more competitive, or in some cases even surviving during economic uncertainty to make sure you set yourself up. And then we'll end with some Q&A. So as I mentioned, one of the big topics we get is always, tell me the trends and what my peers are thinking about in the industry. We work with probably thousands of organizations over the course of any given year. One of the things we haven't done is compiling basically in a survey format like Autodesk has done. So I'm excited. It's one of the things that we always kind of look at, trying to figure out where we need to be positioned. So Autodesk took the time of talking with thousands of organizations. You're going to hear James talk a lot about just what they were and who they were and the kind of questions they asked. But the cool part was they were intentful questions to get to the root of the problems. So once I saw this data, it inspired me and the rest of the team to say, we got to get this out in front of our clients early so you guys can start thinking about maybe things you want to do with your business. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to James and let him take us through the survey findings. So James, let me pass the screen over to you. And I'll hand it off.
Thank you very much, Alan. Pleasure to be on here today. You'll hear some real good insights from the State of Design and Make report, and you'll also heard it being spoken a slightly different way. So I'm based in Birmingham in the United Kingdom. My role is a global role within Autodesk. I talk to our customers about what matters to them within their industry, and also talk to our customers how Autodesk is seeing the world. This gives me a great opportunity to present to you those findings and what really resonates with our customers. Autodesk is really excited about the new initiative we're taking, and that's with the State of Design and Make report. This report has been a huge effort for Autodesk, and it's involved many, many teams in the business, and that includes globally. And when you look at the State of Design and Make report itself, what you will find is that the State of Design and Make report is an annual, global, and cross-industry report. It's annual because we're going to produce a new report every year. We're already working on the report for the next year, 2024. It's global because it's going to cover the regions of the world, which I'll show you on the next slide. And it's also cross-industry because we cover companies that are in architecture, engineering, construction, design and manufacturing, and media and entertainment. The report itself focused on how business leaders are responding to the impacts of digital transformation across those industries. And this year was the very first year we've launched the report. And as I've said, we'll be creating new ones every year. With Autodesk being the leader in those 3 industries, it is a really compelling report. And this is what I hope to convey to you within this call. To get these insights, Autodesk partnered with an external company, just as Alan explained, and that was Ipsos. And as a leader in global research and insights, the survey and interview process went to 2,565 industry leaders, futurists, and experts. They were surveyed and interviewed, right, in necessary areas. And that came from across the globe, as you can see in those blue areas on your screen. We did focus on our main industries of architecture, engineering, construction, design and manufacturing, and entertainment. We've got a very broad mix. When you look at the report, you'll be able to see that information break down for those industries as well as seeing those regional differences. So you can compare and contrast what happens in North America, compare it to what happens in Europe, compare it to Asia Pacific. You've got that ability to see the differences across the world. So it's not just an industry perspective, you can get that global perspective across all those regions too, as well as the industries. There's a lot of information that's within here. And as the State of Design and Make report is global and it's an annual study, it's intended for leaders like you. In other words, leaders who build everything from the buildings, construction, skyscrapers, through to films and the products, of course, that are used. You're experts at connecting that physical and those digital worlds. And as your teams collaborate and design things, either virtually or together in real life, you can get great results. And this is what we see from Autodesk. We've captured some really good, compelling information on digitalization, as well as challenges and opportunities businesses have faced. Through interviews with thousands of experts, this report identifies the biggest drivers shaping today's business. That involves their decisions, as well as how business leaders around the globe are navigating them for the future. The key focus areas were on how leaders were staying resilient and relevant in an ever-changing world. We often refer to that as business resilience. So I'll just say that again, that's on how those leaders are staying resilient and relevant in that ever-changing world. The second one was on talent. That's how companies are attracting, training, and retaining a skilled workforce. That came through again and again in the survey. And thirdly, this is a topic and a theme that's becoming very important to companies, and that's on sustainability. So we're really starting to talk to those customers about how they are achieving sustainable outcomes. I'll show you some examples later on and some findings from that report on sustainability. And I'll show you where companies have been focusing to achieve that increase in sustainability. The first thing I'm going to talk today is about business resilience. That's on how it emerges and the uncertainty that's happening. Here's what our research uncovered. It was firstly that businesses are more resilient than ever before, even after leaders have faced everything from the pandemic to inflation on a global scale. And how are they doing that? Well, business leaders and experts said that they will increase investments in technology, product development, sustainability, talent, and other areas even more over the next 3 years than they did over the past 3 years. That's quite insightful. We think of all those challenges, we think of the shift to digitalization. Just think for yourself that companies that have been reporting results and what's happening to them with digitalization. What was really interesting is that the next 3 years, they plan to invest even more. There must be compelling reasons for that, and that's what we're going to talk about within this report. And secondly, the more digitally mature companies are, the more they're increasing their future investments. So if you consider yourself as a digitally mature business, interesting part about this, those are the businesses which have continued to invest at an increasing rate. So that investment is clearly giving a return on investment. They're getting something out of this. So within the report itself, what we noticed is that because of increased digitalization, the pandemic forced most of us to rely on those digital tools. And our study shows that those business leaders have continued to rely on them and to allow their businesses to adapt to almost anything. This wasn't a change just because of a pandemic. It wasn't just a change because of competition or geopolitical issues recently. They're getting benefits across their business as a whole. In fact, 79% of leaders were surveyed, 79% of the leaders we surveyed said that the future growth of their company now depends on digital tools. That digitalization has become crucial to these businesses. It's no longer just a computer, not like an asset, not like a machine tool or a piece of plant. This digitalization is doing something different. And what it's doing differently for them, it's yielding the following benefits. Many respondents also told us that this investment in digital tools has led to benefits such as including cost reductions, increased innovation, and the ability to launch products and services faster. If we look at those three there, we think about inflation in today's world and interest rates. That ability to tackle cost reductions become increasingly important. Those businesses which have increased that investment in digital tools, we're getting that benefit anyway, and have been more adept and ready to face this challenge which is now facing companies. The second is on innovation. When we think about innovation, a good question I like to ask companies when I meet them is this: how will your customers use your products differently in the next 5 years? Whether you're in construction, whether you're in design and manufacturing, or even if you're in media entertainment, how customers will use products differently in 5 years' time will be different to as they use it today. So think for yourself at the moment, how will your customers use your products differently? This is where you can have fantastic conversations around digitalization, such as here with IMAGINiT. They can help to provide that insight and that benefit, or just collecting information and talk about other companies have done. And we talked about that ability to launch products and services faster, because change is happening so quickly now and so often. That ability to be first to market or to take the solution first to your customers, that is becoming increasingly important. So when we look at those yielding benefits from digital transformation, cost reduction, increased innovation, and improved ability to launch products and services faster, this has become absolutely key. Those companies that did it first recognize those benefits. That's why they replied in the report, they're increasing their investment. I'd also ask you to think about questions as well, that are there other benefits you see with digital transformation? So if you transform your business digitally, what are other benefits you see? Because we also gathered during the survey that business resilience benefits were also produced. We identified that 72% of respondents from those more digitally mature companies said their organization was well prepared to handle unforeseen geopolitical changes. That was significantly more than the 52% of respondents from less digitally mature companies. To put that in perspective, those that were more digitally mature, 72% of those said they were well placed to deal with changes. For those that weren't digitally mature, that dropped to 52%. So there are real benefits these companies were achieving that enabled them to respond to these unforeseen changes. Quite an interesting aspect to think about, and it's one I would like you to think about as well, because these benefits from digitalization have enabled companies to be much more resilient with the challenges they faced. To give more context to these benefits, we also asked industry leaders where their companies are on their digital transformation journey. This led to our second big takeaway from the research, and that was leaders from companies that are either approaching or have already achieved the digital transformation goals told us they plan to increase them at higher rates. And these higher rates areas had led us to identify that companies plan to invest in several areas. So first of all, 74% were in technology. That was to deliver better project outcomes. Second areas was on product and service innovation. So think about that product design, it's the physical product itself, but it's also on the service, how to use that data that you're capturing from your engagements, how to use that data you've got within your business that enables them to have a better customer experience and then change the way they're engaging with those customers. And thirdly, that's data management and analytics, very much related to that service innovation. So at digitally mature companies, investments over the next 3 years were set to increase at much higher rates. And that's not just in technology, as you can see here. This showed that leaders are seeing a return on investment from their digital investments, and they're also increasing it throughout their business. We also found that leaders from digitally mature companies are more likely than others to be looking at ways to respond to clients faster. That ability to respond for quotations. Can your business deliver it within this period of time? Do you have this in stock? What can we do to get this item, get this product, get this service? These were the kind of questions companies were being faced as they responded to these changes. But also to increase that existing service they can offer. Customers want to get closer to the companies they serve. They want to talk to them more frequently, understand their businesses. What outcomes do they want to achieve? What do those customers really want to do? How can you offer greater value than the competition? And that came through as increasing existing services. But also they wanted to add new services to their business. This enabled them to expand and give greater value. But not only expand into existing companies, they wanted to look into new markets too. This digitalization enabled them to do that. But of course, with all the digitalization, we still need the big thing that matters to all companies, their most valuable asset, and that's talent. And that second theme here was on talent, and having the right team is essential when facing your future challenges. And most of the leaders we interviewed agreed that talent, more than any other factor, is a top challenge for them as a business. Across all industries, business leaders and experts said that access to skilled talent is a top challenge. In fact, many respondents said it was more of a top challenge for their company than any other factor. Luckily, businesses are working hard to bridge that talent gap. In addition to hiring from outside their geographical areas and continuing to make investments in remote work, many companies are investing in training. That's for new and existing employees to ensure their workers have the skills needed for the companies to succeed. And that's not a surprise, because 72% of those leaders told us that the past 3 years have brought more changes to their workforce than the previous 25 years. Just think of that. The last 3 years has been more change than the previous 25. That is huge. That's considerable when you consider the changes that have taken place before those 3 years. We've seen the internet, mobile phones, cloud computing. That's all started to occur previous to what's happened in the last 3 years. The last 3 years have brought significant change. And of course, when you do everything right and people apply for a job, that doesn't mean they already have the skills they needed. And it was roughly 2/3 of those leaders and experts said their companies struggle to find new employees with the right skills. That's why leaders are addressing this skill difference with upskilling. In fact, upskilling is one of the broadest areas of agreement in our entire survey. 93% of respondents agree it's important to them. That was the ability to find an employee, find someone to join the workforce, and then get them upskilled. And what we noticed here from that engagement is that the companies told us they're addressing their talent gaps in these ways. So while the respondents agreed that talent shortages are delaying projects and hampering innovation goals, we found that digitally mature companies seem to be taking more active steps to address the problem. Our insights showed that remote work and reputation for sustainability are important tools for companies looking to fill talent gaps. Sustainability was significantly important in this area. That ability to explain to new employees what companies were doing, how they were differentiating, how the technology was doing that, and how they were delivering that sustainable value. There was significant evidence and proof about that within the report. And that with jobs evolving faster over the past 3 years than over the previous quarter of a century, effective training is crucial to success of recruitment and retention programs. Now, that training can take place internally inside a company, or you can reach out externally with your trusted partners that can deliver training to those new employees. But it's also for new ways of working too. People are interested in new ways of working. They want to use the latest technology. They want to be differentiated. They want to make a real change and have a meaningful work. And this is where sustainability is a key area we found within the report. And those respondents cited the top skills they were looking for in new employees. That was skills in technology, skills in collaboration. That was skills and understanding of regulatory knowledge, innovation, and the active learning. So you could see here, companies were telling us that those top skills that they were looking for were in technology, collaboration, regulatory knowledge, inventory, and learning. Digitalization plays a significant part here, and the key theme of sustainability was absolutely key to attracting that talent. Now, when we look at sustainability, as this image shows here, often people think about solar panels, or think about wind power, or think about energy. I'm going to show some insight within this report that showed that was not what companies told us what it was all about. That was not what was winning them business. That was not what was delivering value to the customer. I'll be showing you some key takeaways of that very, very shortly. Business leaders viewed sustainability in this way. So they were facing pressure from customers, investors, employees, and regulators. And those customers were telling us where the pressure came from. Business leaders expect steps to achieve those long-term business payoffs, to give real sources of revenue going forward. And that was to be long-term changes, and it'll become a major source of revenue for these companies. And when we looked at the examples that I gave here, so I present what companies are facing sustainability pressure from. They're getting it from their customers, companies are getting it from their investors, companies are getting it from government, and companies were also getting it from their employees. Now, when you look at those 4 topics on the screen here, I would like you to think about this. Just think, just shortly now, where is the pressure coming from with your business with sustainability? So where is that pressure coming from for sustainability with your business? Out of those 4 there, we had a clear winner. Before I show that, I want you to think what that could be, what that answer could be, and how it could affect you. Because that's what the respondents did with the survey we sent. And we collated the information. The top pressure came back as from customers. 82% of those leaders cited customers as the influential pressure point for investing in sustainability. Companies need to listen to their customers, obviously, but it was customers that were coming back and telling us that's where their pressure came from. Even more than investors, even more than governments, even more than their employees. 82%. That is a significant amount of people. And when you think about your business and your customers, what will they require? What are they looking for? Because this is information we captured, and it's changed the way we as a company are thinking too. I'll look at sustainability. I mentioned earlier on, people often feel and think about solar panels, wind power, clean energy. So we asked customers and the respondents 2 questions. What changes are you aware of that this industry / organisation has already made to be more sustainable? And the second one, what are the top 3 challenges this company faces today? If you look at that chart on the right-hand side, and this is taken from page 46 of the report. So if you downloading the report, accessing the report, you can find more details about this. But I wanted to present this one to you, because if you looked at the top 3 we have here, that was decreasing waste from production and or using more recycled materials, applying sustainable design principles, and designing products considering environmental impacts, the top 3 were all product design focused. It didn't come from clean energy. It wasn't about the wind power, solar power. It was important. You can see it is stated there. But the top 3 were about the product design process. And we got this across all the industries, especially those in AEC, architecture, engineering, construction, and in design and manufacturing. So when we look at sustainability, we see the number one pressure came from customers, and we see the top three challenges they are meeting with sustainability all came from product design focused areas. Significant impact can be achieved with sustainability when you start looking at the products and what it means to your customer. This report captured that, and we contain it within here. There are other information that's shown on here too. When you look at the report, you can then get the transparency to understand exactly what other companies were saying. And if you remember at the start of this call, there was over 2,500 respondents to this survey. 2,500 is extensive. And that included enterprise-sized customers down to very small businesses. It was a significant finding. Results are broken out even more in the full-scale report, but for the benefits of this webinar today, I'm just going to give you the key themes. And I'd like you to think about what those challenges could be and how it could work for you. Perhaps those are results I'm showing on the screen you expected to see. Perhaps they're a surprise. But one thing is absolutely for sure, that the report itself contains evidence, it contains visibility on exactly the challenges our customers have been facing. And when we looked at the conclusion, there is one overarching takeaway from this survey data and its interviews. Then it would be this. We can say that companies have grappled with a great deal of change over the past few years, especially the last 3 years. But to meet their goals for the future, leaders and experts will have to continue to rethink and refine their approaches to solving the most strategic challenges. I started initially talking about business resilience, and that's where business leaders and those experts stated that they will increase investments in technology, product design, sustainability, talent, and other areas even more over the next 3 years than they did over the previous 3 years. And that more digitally mature companies are increasing future investments at a higher rate than other companies. I mentioned earlier on, 72% of the respondents that identified themselves as digitally mature said they could adapt better than those less mature at 52%. That digitalization gave them a real ability to respond to those unforeseen changes. I also talked about talent. And across all industries, more business leaders and experts said that access to skilled talent is a top challenge for their company more than any other factor. In addition to hiring from outside their geographical areas and continuing to make investments in remote work, many businesses are investing in training for new and existing employees to ensure that their workers have the skills needed for the company to succeed. And when we look at that investment and that upskilling, as I mentioned earlier on, that training can exist inside the business and it can involve partners external to the business. But also these days, there's more digital ways to train and find out what's possible too. This digitalization really gives those companies a big benefit here. And then we came to sustainability. And we talked about the pressures companies are facing from customers, investors, employees, and regulators. And companies are taking concrete actions now to meet these environmental sustainability goals. Business leaders and experts expect those steps to achieve a long-term business payoff, with most stating that sustainability measures will eventually become sources of revenue for their companies. What I also stated here with sustainability, the number one pressure came from customers. I also showed with sustainability the top 3 challenges companies were focusing on were all in that product design focused area. I also stated as well that sustainability, that's a major attraction when looking for new talent and new hires. It's an area new talent is particularly interested in. So what we started to see then was real benefits of those 3 themes, but they didn't exist in isolation. They aren't siloed, they're intertwined. So a key takeaway here was that all these challenges and solutions didn't exist on their own. As I stated previously, when companies have taken steps to attract and retain talent, many respondents told us they are attracting employees by being more sustainable. It made the company more attractive to the future workforce. And one thing is for certain, by working across all three areas, leaders and experts can take charge of their future and prepare their companies for success in a very unpredictable world, where the only thing more expensive than the action is inaction. And if you want to know what's possible here, Autodesk is holding its Design and Make conference. That's the AU 2023 Design and Make conference in Las Vegas. That's from November the 13th to the 15th. If you're attending, you're going to have a fantastic time. I have seen the agenda, I have seen the classes, I've seen the presenters, and they are significant and they are impactful. And that's across all three industries I talked earlier: architecture, engineering, construction, design and manufacturing, and in media and entertainment. This clearly demonstrates the leadership Autodesk is providing in design and make. For those of you that are unable to attend, there are also digital passes you can get for some of those courses, which are absolutely free. And you can do the search for that, find that information, and IMAGINiT can provide you details too. So you can register for free. And there's 40 of those sessions that are available to access with those free passes too, for those that are not able to attend. Within my time on this call today, I've been able to give you just a brief insight into that report and its findings. I've explained the significance. I've explained who has given that feedback. I explained where it came from geographically. I explained in the report there was 3 key themes: business resilience, talent, and sustainability. I've also given examples that these 3 do not operate in isolation. They are intertwined. And by intertwining them, it makes businesses stronger, more ability to respond for unforeseen changes. It's okay me talking about this report. I'm now going to hand back to Alan, and Alan's going to give much more details about parts of what he sees this going forward. So Alan, back to you.
Cool, thank you very much. So thanks, James, for doing this. It's always good getting a little detail behind those reports, especially covering all the different verticals you talked about. I probably read this report probably 3 or 4 times, and I'm still diving deeper and finding information. It's actually making me change the questions that I'm asking clients I go in and talk to. So it's also great to hear that Autodesk is going to continue this report. And James, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the amount of surveyors is almost doubling next year.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. The survey for next year is underway. It's in development, and it's twice the amount of people we are going to. We've had a great feedback, great response. And what people are asking for is where that data came from. Can we get more of it? Can we cover new areas? And that's exactly what we're doing. This investment was accelerating from Autodesk, such has been the feedback we've had.
Perfect. Thanks, James. So I want to switch gears now, and I want to talk about use cases. So one of the things that always comes up is it's great to hear all these reports. It's great to hear what your peers are thinking about. But the question is, how are they actually tackling these 3 major topics around business resilience, talent, and sustainability? And I know James covered a lot of stuff in that time frame, and the question really comes into is, we kind of broke it up into the 8 key takeaways from the survey, and revolved around sustainability, attracting employees, digital transformation, the business growth. You can see them up here. So as I go through these examples, you're going to see me showcasing which buckets that they fell into that were helping resolve those problems. So we have a broad range of examples I'm going to go through. The one thing I'm going to encourage everybody to think about is, again, these are verticalized, whether it's manufacturing, construction, design, owners, whatever it happens to be. The goal here is more to get your juices flowing, to thinking about what kind of things in my organizations can I tackle, and what can I fix, and does it make sense for me? So let's go through some of these and talk in a little more detail. So the first one I want to bring up is, and this is probably one of the most unique ones on this call, is from the AEC industry, and it's a large MEP firm based out of Ohio and Kentucky. And basically they wanted to talk about how do they transform their business, and with goals revolving around how do we increase our margins, how do we reduce the ups and downs of employees turnover that you heard James talk about. One, it's hard finding talent. Two, it's expensive getting new talent. And three, when you lose somebody, it definitely changes the workflow. And the last part was providing more consistent models to their clients, meaning a better user experience. As they looked at their business, they asked, how can we do more with the same or less? And the interesting part is most people fix that problem. Let's go find some more bodies and let's go do more work. In their case, they actually took the approach of saying, let's look at the issues we have in an organization around repetitive tasks. They wanted to reduce duplication of efforts. They wanted to reduce the technology spend to focus on the right solutions, just not more solutions. They wanted to look at better flow and use of that data, and in some cases even start to leverage AI. So instead of hiring bodies, over the last couple of years, they went and hired programmers. So think about that for a second. An engineering firm went out and was hiring programmers to go build solutions to improve that workflow. So they ended up investing a huge amount of money in doing this. And basically their goal was, is they went through and they did a lot of testing around automation tools. They tested, they reworked them, they tested them again, and they're continuing even to this day of doing that workflow. But some of the interesting outcomes that came out of it were probably the most compelling parts. First and foremost, they actually had a better employee experience and actually a happier employee. So what they found was because they took some of these tedious tasks and these automations in the equation, it actually made the employees happy with the work they were doing. The second part was, and probably some of you guys have heard the boomerang effect, when an employee decides to leave and come back. And what they were finding was when employees would leave because of either different type of work, more money, other stuff, what they found is that they found it more fulfilling working for this organization because they didn't have to do all that stuff that was just tedious and time consuming. Next, they also found that because of the consistency of the automation, making sure that they had the right information in the right places, they had a better customer experience, meaning so when they're working with the architects, the general contractors, owners, it was more consistent information and more compelling for them to be able to use. They were also able, and this was probably one of the more interesting parts, is they found that when they lost bodies, they didn't have to necessarily go replace them because they decided, again, get the most out of their employees rather than focusing on getting more employees. The last part, when this is probably the biggest piece for them, in doing all this and making the investment in programmers, they found that their profit margins increased well beyond, and I'm not talking to like single digits, 10, 20, 30%, the industry average. The best part of what they were doing was because of this great success they've had in shortening their workflow and improving the process and providing more information, that they're actually now looking at building this out as a business model of selling as a solution. You're going to hear more about this. We'll try and get it linked into the event or an email to you guys, but they're actually showcasing what they're doing on November 8th to start making it available to other engineers in the design community. So the next example I want to go over is high-tech manufacturing. So again, you're not going to hear me use a lot of names and all the solutions, but this is an organization that's been around for 50 plus years, and they're starting to get to the point where they're in a stagnant market, in some cases even decline. So they want to talk about how do they diversify their business. And one of the things that they did really well was not necessarily the machinery that they made, but the workflow and process they built around it. So what they did was they were investing in sensors, the Internet of Things, to do a couple of things. One was how could they practically monitor and service overheating or failures of equipment? Number two, if those systems did fail, could they build systems and reroute the work so they didn't have disruption in production? The last thing they did was over time, by building all this data and seeing where things failed, when things failed, how much time it was up and running, they could actually go and provide or basically create preventative maintenance on the machinery so they wouldn't have to worry about that downtime. So they started thinking about, with all this experience and knowledge they gained over the last 20, 30 years of doing this, they said, why don't we start looking at diversifying out and creating what they coined as their digital twins around heating, cooling of buildings and working with organizations. So one of the organizations they started with was an HVAC organization that builds fans. And they basically went to this organization and said, here's things we can do by helping you work better inside your Revit models using the Autodesk platform services, or formerly known as Forge, to get better visualizations of the equipment you're installing, to do things like setting room temperature and points, understanding when occupancy and how that affects that, doing visualization of the equipment for failures and as a bonus, they basically were able to do simulations of saying, all right, here's the best place to do it from a sustainability standpoint. So ultimately, this allowed them to provide a better client experience and a more consistent temperature for their clients. So at the end of the day, this organization's morphing their business to go where clients are looking for stuff by using technology they've already created, which I thought was a really compelling concept. So let's switch gears and talk about building product manufacturers for a second. So I always find building product manufacturers really interesting because they straddle the world between design and manufacturing, meaning they got to work with architects, engineers, structural engineers, and they also have to have a manufacturing workflow to help support what they're going to build. So this organization was in a great spot. They're making money, they're getting work done, they got more work coming in they can handle. They're actually starting to even turn away business. And they started to say, we have to be able to do things better to be more proactive, reactive, and take advantage of projects coming about. So things that caught their attention when they did a full workflow process review is they said that it was taking them roughly about 12 months to go from the point when they got a project to fabricating it and basically putting the part in the building. Second thing they noticed was in their current design flow when they're using a 2D application was taking 3 times as long to get from estimating to the bill of materials they're creating. The third thing is they were recreating a lot of data as the project moved from design, fabrication, installation, which meant there was a huge amount of silos of information, which wasted times, errors of information being created. The last thing they saw was no visibility in parts that failed and the cost of doing that rework. So after doing that detailed review and looked at what they could do for creating new workflows, and basically they did a proof of concept and said, let's validate if this is something we can do on a larger scale. And what they found out was when they did this stuff, and again, I'm not going to go through all the details of the tools and systems they put in place, but through automation, getting different technologies, looking at really where could they automate the process, they reduced the time from, and again, on a typical project that might take them 12 months, they could typically do it now in 6 weeks. They went from a 2D environment to a building information modeling environment to be more compliant with designers. They then use applications like Inventor that basically allowed them to automatically convert that stuff from Revit to something the manufacturer could use, which ultimately allowed them to actually repurpose an entire division. So think about that for a second. They had a whole group that was doing stuff that they could automate and repurpose. Again, not get rid of those people, but say, could we use them for other things? So in their terms, they called it their version of a digital thread, or threading the digital needle. And basically that meant from how do we create information going from a design to fabrication, fabrication to finance, fabrication to the job site, and ultimately from the job site back to the corporate if there was any issues, which allowed them to revamp their implementation throughout the life cycle of the project. This included things like safety, field verification, change orders, tracking and rework, and costing in projects. So this is going to allow them to actually optimize the profits, get better use of the employees, have a better experience, and make sure that they're staying up with what their clients are asking for in some cases, which was design firms and the owners alike. All right, so let's talk about industrial machinery for a second. So this next example revolves around an organization that basically, for lack of a better term, they build machinery to move large equipment down a production line. So they had a major problem, and the major problem was that they had a lot of lack of communication and we'll say a poor customer experience because they couldn't get them stuff they needed quickly and efficiently. So they had disparate and disconnected systems, limited communication between groups, and even towards clients. So ultimately, the clients were forced to change because they were going to start going somewhere else if they couldn't keep their production lines up quickly and efficiently. So the goal was to build their version of a digital twin of the equipment on the shop floor to give them more visibility into the bill of materials so that when problem did arise, they could actually order the right parts at the right time and not have everybody jumping around trying to look at it. So they built a data platform internally and focused on a business process managed via PLM and integrated with their ERP systems. This allowed their customers to basically scan a barcode on a piece of equipment in their facility and get a digital assembly either on their phone, PC, or tablet, all via cloud applications. So that means they didn't have to be connected internally. They could get access to information anywhere. This made it easier for them to order or do maintenance because they could actually show the parts, show the materials, what was going on, which helped digitally connect the workflow, and the ability of clients to access the information in real time. So what this improved for them was basically the short version was it improved their customer experience. Clients were happier because they get access to the information where they needed it. It supported their parts business, which was a huge part of their business, by making it more efficient and effective to find and replace those parts. They had happier staff. They had more efficient staff because they were able to, again, instead of them going searching for stuff, they could actually spend more time doing the right stuff, which was actually get the machinery up and running. Because of this, and just like any organization that does any kind of digital transformation, you always have the people that have been there for a long time that actually struggle with change. And just like any organization, they struggle with the same change. But what they came to find out once they got this into place, almost every one of those, their employees said the same things. We had no idea how we actually got our job done before using the old workflow. And last part is, again, instant access to information, which is always important. The bonus of this digital experience, it gave them a competitive advantage over their competition. In this case, they reused information being created in the design solution and made it available via the Autodesk Platform Service Solution, or you guys might know it as Forge, to allow them to give it to people anywhere across the world. And next steps are already looking at different ways of using this information to go into different markets or different segments. All right, so this is my last one. So most of the other ones you've heard me has been what I'll call fairly, I won't say complex, but they've been more in-depth and required a lot of work, whether it was working through us or doing things internally. This one was tackling a big problems between groups. And what they had was they basically, they had a conversation with the clients. This is a general contractor. And they were looking for ways of how do we actually give them time back to do their work. And what they were finding was when they went to go talk to their project managers, they said, one of the biggest things we struggle with is taking submittals or creating the submittals from a design spec from an architect or an MEP firm or structural engineer. And it was a huge time suck. It could take them anywhere when they did the averages 2 to 4 weeks to do this work. So what this did, besides just being a time suck, was also it left them open to risk and liability. Because anytime you're re-entering and manually entering information or duplicating information, you're running the risk of human error. So the organization had roughly about 20 project managers doing this work, and they typically were doing 3 to 20 projects per year based on the size of the project. So they basically sat down and said, is this a big enough problem for us to solve? And they started doing some simple math. They said, we got 20 project managers, let's say they're doing 3 projects per year, and it roughly takes them 3 weeks to do the work. They basically came back and said this was a 7,200 hour problem that they needed to fix. And if I put it in financial terms, at a bare minimum, it was $360,000 issue. And the solution they found ended up costing them under $10,000 to fix it. So they said there had to be a better way of doing this. So they ended up finding a solution that Autodesk ended up buying a couple of years ago that they weren't aware about. And basically the concept with it was creating these submittals from specifications automatically. So taking a workflow that was taking them 2 to 4 weeks down to an hour or 2, in some cases even less. So the outcomes that they found from implementing a solution, so again, not just trying to change the world, but let's go change a process, is they reduced the man hours on the project. They reduced the risk of human error because of people fat fingering or being tired. They got the time back to do better, to better manage the project, if I went to improving it. And lastly, and most importantly, they had happier PMs that didn't have to spend that time doing repetitive tasks. Again, I know this is a simple example, but the message hopefully get across. In some cases, it's important to listen to your staff and say, what kind of things do you guys feel are the big problems? And then can we fix it? And is it worth fixing? So I've spent a lot of time talking about clients. I feel being Justin, James, obviously step in if there's things you want to add here. We spent a lot of time talking about the industries and solving problems, and I've given you a bunch of examples for different verticals that they're doing, but I also think it's important to understand how the manufacturers are listening. And Autodesk doesn't just do these surveys just so they can share out and say what's going on. They want to actually be able to take action. So for some of you guys might know that they've been building on this foundation for years. They've been talking about, if you guys have heard anything around the Autodesk, they've been talking about this Autodesk platform services around 2 programs called Forma and Fusion. You're going to continue to see them basically take shape of how these applications are going to help solve some of the problems. But the other thing that they're also looking at is we've had a lot of conversation around AI and ChatGPT. And one of the interesting parts that I found out, and I've been talking to a lot of people about it lately, is ChatGPT has taken the world by storm over the last year. And it's exponentially gotten better every week, every month as it's learning more information. When you look at it from a design standpoint, adding data, it exponentially makes it more complicated. So Autodesk is doing two major things to try and help solve a lot of these business cases, and it's going to be a long process. It's something they're going to fix overnight. I've heard some things you're going to see, and we've already seen some stuff today. You're going to see some stuff in 3 years. They've got a plan almost out 10 years. And basically, the two things they're going to do is the first one is work on having a platform service that's cloud-based. So this is going to allow them to build a cloud-based platform that's going to help them understand many types of data and design. Secondly, this is going to allow them to build third-party platforms like Google and Apple do, so that if they can't create it, they let other organizations go create information that can be used via this Autodesk platform services, which is hopefully going to help with communication, collaborations, and workflows. The second big thing they're working on is AI. And AI is a really big topic. And I'm not going to say that Autodesk is going to have all the answers. In some cases, they're partnering with other people, but there's four major things that if you guys are looking at what AI is doing in the design industry, they kind of break it down into four different buckets. So you have generative AI, which is basically building parameters for a model, which allows applications to perform unlimited design options so you can make decisions on what's going on. So in some cases, you might spend time creating one option where if you use AI, they can get 20 or 30 and say, what's the best looking option I've got here? The second thing they're looking at is co-creation, which basically allows you to work in conjunction with the AI to solve real world problems on the fly. So think of it, instead of let the PC create applications, let me manipulate my models and let it tell me what it might look like or how it might be able to fit in this environment as I'm moving things around. The third one is informative AI, which allows you to see real-time data and information as you're building your design. This allows you to make informed decisions as you create your design. So think about it, whether I'm working in manufacturing, in this case it's a building, what are the ramifications of me putting office space with retail space with commercial space? And how does that affect my costs, my income from that building? Does it meet the requirements of that building? And the last one is predictive AI. This is going to allow you to make recommendation decisions on your design based on real world environments. So from a machining standpoint, it could be heating, it could be bending. From a design standpoint, it could be everything from wind, air, water, other systems. But the goal is let me understand how my part is going to function under certain environments. So if you want to learn more about this, I know James talked a lot about it. There's two ways of seeing it. One is if you go to Autodesk University, they're going to talk a lot about this stuff on main stage. If you can't join, there will be events that are going to be virtual like James stated. At the end of the day, there's a lot of options for you to learn this kind of stuff. There's going to be a lot of changes happening over the next couple of years. But I think it's important to understand that Autodesk is taking the lead of trying to help fix that. James, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think you did a wonderful job, Alan, of articulating what the future is going to look like. AI has become a very hot topic in the last 12 months with other companies. But it's important to consider that Autodesk has been in this area now for 2 decades or more, right? That's a long time. And the reason why you can look on the screen now and you can see what AI can do with construction, whether it's in layouts or whether it's in product design with generative technologies, but it's also with the data as well. Autodesk has been doing this for a long time and it's all coming together. The platform approach that Alan just talked about here, that's design and make platform, very much related to the design and make report, design and make conference, that category that we are absolutely leading in, and bringing all this together. We see it as a value of bringing it all together, because what holds it together is that data, because you want to automate those workflows, you want to remove that low value add work, you want to ensure you get those insights that separate you from the competition. That's exactly what we're doing here with data, with AI. It's a key feature at Autodesk University, exactly that as Alan described. But when you follow the feeds that you'll see from either IMAGINiT or Autodesk, you're going to see those announcements ever more. I was just looking today as you were speaking, Alan. There's 2 that come out today. One is very much on the product design, on consumer products, and there's another one there about energy consumption too. So again, 2 have come out just today. So there's a lot of information that's out there in the marketplace that we're pushing out. There's a lot of information, a lot of work being done, but we're bringing it to you all in one place, which is going to be through here, this platform approach we go to. It's absolutely fantastic time to be involved with Autodesk, and you'll see more at the Autodesk University. So if you can't attend in person, please just try and join some of these classes you can through the digital passes, and you'll get a real flavour of what it's all about and what's coming your way. And that's going to be launched by Andrew Anignos, no less, our CEO. So yeah, significant investment, high profile, and a big long-term commit from Autodesk.
Perfect, thanks. So again, James, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and giving some of your knowledge and information about the report. I hope everybody on the call got the creative juices flowing, thinking about some examples and what your peers are tackling and how they're trying to improve it. You've heard a lot about organization across the spectrum, changing things. You've heard buzzwords like digital twins, you've heard data integrity, you've heard about automation. Please remember, it's not always about the complexity of something. It could be something simple you're trying to work on. My biggest message, and I say this internally and externally, my final message is really simple. Continue to challenge the world around you as you look at your internal challenges that are affecting you and your organization. There's always ways of fixing it. The question is an important fix. So with that, I'll open up if we have any questions in the chat.